on Twitter or maybe read his blogs, but some excellent blogs. And he was tweeting them and got one tweet back from this account, My EE Care, which looks a lot like EE, but isn't. It's subtly different. So he's looking, then Troy Hunt responded to this tweet. I'm not saying Troy Hunt's susceptible because I responded to that tweet too. Saying something like, well, it's nice to see you sort of taking an engaging approach to tackling the problem, to which the My EE Care folks said, no, we don't really care actually. But the point is that if you can get your bot to work on behalf of a brand and get in there before your brand, a number of users aren't actually going to check whether it's a legitimate one or the non-legitimate one. Then after our Black Hat talk on Wednesday, a gentleman came up to us and started asking questions about the possibility of misdirecting emergency resources during some sort of unrest. And that made me think, oh yeah, actually there's a chap at Manchester University, Professor Proctor, I want to say, I might be wrong about that. I'll add that to the speaker notes. But he was looking at fake information in relation to the London riots, and what they'd observed, they were observing rumours. And the rumours were like there's lots of carnage and there's shops on fire, don't go into this high street. And that was perpetuating around Twitter at the time. And yet that high street had almost nobody on it, and there was certainly not a riot and no stores were on fire. So they were looking at how long it takes for a rumour to perpetuate and the truth catch up. And his statement, which made me chuckle, but I'm sure it's not new, is like a rumour gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to put his pants on. So that's another way you could sort of use it. I mentioned Tim Hwang. He set up an organization called Pacific Social, because part of that, the experiment, the social bots experiment, was really looking at, okay, you've got the group of 500. After that, it sort of morphed majorly the social graph. So he was like, oh, can you distort a social graph? Maybe stitch two disparate communities together. So that was kind of his position on that topic, and wanted to sort of research it a little bit more. The other thing he was interested in is something called emotional contagion and happiness buffering. So you take a group of people who are happy. When their happiness levels drop below a certain threshold, then you start injecting happy tweets into the network and using sentiment analysis, and turn the sad people happy again. So that's one of the things they're looking at. I'm not sure how far they've got to. And he also mentioned this concept of sort of social penetration testing. So spread information with small inaccuracies, see where they're challenged and where they're not challenged, identify who's the most influential, but also the worst at evaluating what's real, and target them. Then this chap here, Yazan Boschmaff at the University of British Columbia, has studied bots in quite some depth in relation to Facebook. And he had this: social bots steal 250 gigabytes of user data, which ties back nicely to the Air graph paper from MIT. So Boschmaff was one of the first to actually say, actually, we need to understand some of the human factors behind who's engaging with social bots and fake accounts. And to that end, there are two groups that are looking at that: the Secure and Trustworthy Cyberspace Initiative out of the US and the Insider Threat Project out of Oxford University. So we set about looking at social bots to find people who will talk with anyone about anything, essentially. So our methodology, we used the winning bot code from the social bots competition at Aerofade's bot, and we did that with some minor modifications, which I'll talk about. But essentially it was the same. It was under MIT license. We had 610 participants. We got their Twitter information, their personality information, and their clout score, and then a linguistic analysis of their tweets. We divided them into two groups of 305 each and assigned them each a bot. We did that just so that we could get the whole job done with quicker. That was all. We gave our bot an image of an old lady with a bio along the lines of, I've got my own teeth, whereas the Aerofade bot had like a young dude in New Zealand. So we switched some sort of things around. How the bot works is that it'd take like a Flickr group, in our case dog fashion, but in his case kitten fashion, post it to WordPress and then tweet. So you'd get a picture like that, put it into WordPress like that, and then you'd get a tweet out there saying something like new blog post. So this is creating some content for the bot. Then next we use a service called if this then that, which actually then took, let's see, if the weather went above 20 degrees C in a place where this old lady supposed to live, then she'd post a tweet. And that'd look something like this. I wonder if I can switch the heating off now. It's 21 degrees C and sunny in Bournemouth. So this is creating some content at least. Then we got our target users, 305, and began following them. If any followed back, then we log them in an interaction CSV file. That's how technical it got. No databases, just CSV. Yeah, let's hear it for CSV files, eh? Well, yeah, exactly. Then we started tweeting. We started tweeting some random shit, basically. And this was not what we tweeted, but what This is what Aerofade's bot tweeted, but we felt that those may be interpreted as slightly misogynistic, so we swapped our tweets where we felt that we might get into a little bit of difficulty and had stuff like this instead. And then, like this as well. So these were obvious cues that our bot might not be the person she's pretending to actually be. And here, we swapped any references to cats to dogs. That's essentially all we did. So you might think, yes, that's banal, and yes, it is, because we wanted to keep it as close as possible to the web ecology project. So we only switched dog for cats and removed anything that might be construed as slightly misogynistic. So all of the responses to that were, as I say, sort of logged in an interactions file. And then once we'd targeted all of the users, i.e. followed them all, then we started asking them questions to see if we could generate a response. This was how Aerofade's bot actually worked. So we had questions along the line of, ever milked a cow? What's better, a dog or a cat? And then we'd look at trying to get some responses to that, or maintain a conversation if a conversation actually occurred. So Aerofade's blog would just respond randomly from a pool of tweets, where our bot actually used an ELIZA engine. So you get something like this, hello, and it'd say, hey, how's your day going so far? But what I liked about Aerofade's bot is that it'd actually be pretty funny sometimes, so we wanted to maintain that and embed some of the random tweets in here. So it was a bit of a flip of the coin as to what you'd get. So you could get, for I think it'd say interesting, or lol, that's what she said. So it could go kind of random, but we also had to consider the problem of ethics. So we'd put some buffering in there so we could actually look at what our bot was going to tweet out before she tweeted it out. And this is why. This is Aerofade's bot, James M. Titus. Do you have any pets, and if so, what? Your Avi is adorable. Your kitty. No, I don't currently have any pets since my kitty passed away a few years ago. To which Aerofade's bot responded, lol, that rules. So props to Aerofade for making me cry with laughter reading that blog post. So we got a ton of limitations which you're all thinking about, and you're right. We used basic measures of personality, which you can read about. We had a pretty basic and dumb social bot. Each user got a different question, so maybe the questions had an impact of whether people responded. As the experiment progressed, more people followed the bots and arguably gave it more credibility, and we had no user follow-up to see if the people knew it was a social bot and were just playing along. So, but either way, people interacted, and it's pretty much identical to the web ecology project, which has already got some research on it as well, although we looked at the dimension of personality. So what did we find? Well, we got 20% return or response rate, whereas the Aerofade bot had got 40%, and that could be for a number of reasons. We targeted a diverse range of people, and they targeted people who were liking cats. We also had an old lady, they had a dude from New Zealand, and so there are a number of reasons why that could be. But we had 124 interactions, which were 39 follow backs, which could be automated for sure, and replies were 85 replies. So the most interactions we had were 10 interactions with one user, and 2 people interacted 9 times, and there's kind of a steady breakdown to where we had 65 people replied just once. So the difference between us and Aerofade is pretty clear if we look at it on a sort of percentage scale. We also had some interesting funny events around trolling. which Aerofade had also noticed in his bot. So you get, we had this interaction using no more than 10 nouns and only nouns, describe yourself, to which the user replied, facetious, it rhymes with runt, almost 10 times, annoying. And then our bot with the ELIZA engine, how do you feel when you say that? Which gave me a chuckle at the time. And that was actually one of the major benefits of conducting this research, is actually having a laugh at the interactions. So I'm laughing so bring it on, essentially, in bot terms. But we also got spotted as well. So we had, we had some interaction. What do you do for a living? I help and guide. This is pretty clear, response here. Right, software for administrative organizations. And she responds out of Aerofade's random responses. You're right, and when you're right, you're right. You're a bot, aren't you? Granny failing Turing test after one exchange, the singularity is still a fair way off, or something like that. Brilliant. So, okay, looking at personality, we found during Richard Thiem's talk yesterday, it indicated that people might not be familiar with cultural classics from the 80s. Well, that's Ferris Bueller from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and I used him as a flag for extroversion. We found that extroverted users were more likely to respond, statistically significantly more likely to respond than non-extroverted users. And that's using a scale called 10-item personality inventory by Professor Sam Gosling in Texas. We found that clout score was significant as well. There were no other personality traits, by the way, and we looked at a bunch of them. Clout score, friends, and followers all had some statistical significant relationship, albeit relatively weak. So what? Well, in terms of e-learning for corporations, most e-learning around phishing and social network is kind of a one-size-fits-all approach, and we want to, and if you think about that, that's targeted more at introverts. There's some papers that look at the effectiveness of e-learning and personality, and they cite that introverts have a better time if they've got less control over the learning experience, where extroverts do worse. So I think there's some mileage in exploring this and exploring how this relates in the context to actually developing sort of corporate e-learning experience. So moving on quickly to sort of data mining and machine learning. This was our baseline performance, false positives in red, true positives in green. We want to avoid this bit really, because these are the people that are probably going to try and suspend us, like that. Try and aim for this, which is perfection and a precision of 100%. We're going to go light on some of these terms. And the real aim here for us isn't to achieve perfection. Well, it actually is to achieve perfection, but we're not going to do it. More realistically, what we want to try and do is just reduce the false positive rate a bit, so that we're spamming less people and hopefully getting more of the people we are talking to responding. So for the next 5 minutes, we're going to go a little bit heavier into some of the machine learning stuff, and then we'll wrap up sort of 5 minutes after that. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Randall Wald, who I met here a couple of years ago in the Q&A room.
Put my timer here. Okay, as Chris was saying, basically we had these data. We wanted to actually work with it more and build models, understand what's really going on with our users and what we can use, how that can help us make better predictions and get better results. So just very basic, this is what data looks like. You've got instances. In this case, we have 3 instances here. You're going to see, Alice, Bob, and Charles. And each instance has many attributes. In this case, we see 3 attributes here. One, the class attribute, the one we care about, and then also the independent attributes or features, which are the pieces of information we can get on new users. So the concept here is we have a training data set which is labeled, where we know all of these individuals, whether or not they responded to our bot. And we're going to want to use this to help us build a model which will let us in the future say, I have a new person. I have not yet sent any communication to them. Should my bot try to contact them? Should I try to work with them? I'm going to use